The emergency alarms echoed through the Grand Council chamber for the first time in 300 years. Councillor Vexther rushed through the massive doors, his scales rippling with irritation. He had been in the middle of an important dinner when the summons came. Around the circular chamber, other council members were arriving, all looking confused and annoyed. The central hologram flickered to life, showing a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked human territories. As Vexther watched, the dots began turning gray, one after another. Within seconds, every human settlement, station, and colony showed the same status. Empty. Ambassador Thal Seen, an elderly insectoid diplomat, stood at the chamber's center. His compound eyes reflected the hologram's light as he spoke in a trembling voice. They are gone. All of them. Every human in the galaxy has vanished. The chamber erupted in confusion. Councilors shouted questions over each other. Vexther slammed his clawed hand on his desk, demanding silence. Explain yourself, Thalseen. Humans do not simply vanish. There are billions of them. Thalseen activated another display. 72 hours ago, human activity across all sectors began decreasing rapidly. We thought it was a communication error. Our investigation teams reached the first colonies this morning. They found nothing. No bodies, no signs of violence, no indication of disease or disaster. The humans simply packed everything and left. A Vren councillor stood, her crystalline form shimmering. Their ships? Their fleet? Gone, Thalseen replied. Every vessel, from the smallest shuttle to their largest carriers. Captain Day 1's entire battle group vanished from Sector 9 without a trace. They took everything. Furniture, equipment, personal belongings, even the plants from their gardens. Vexther felt a cold sensation in his chest, something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. Their databases? Technical records? Wiped clean. Every computer system, every data storage facility, completely erased. They left nothing behind except the infrastructure itself. Thalseen paused, his mandibles clicking nervously. And messages. The hologram changed, displaying text in multiple languages. The same message repeated across hundreds of locations. You wanted the stars without us. Now you have them. The chamber fell silent. Vexther read the words again, feeling their weight. He remembered the last council session, 3 months ago. The humans had proposed a new trade agreement, one that would have given them more representation in galactic commerce. Vexther himself had led the opposition. He had called their demands excessive, their ambitions dangerous. The proposal had been rejected by a wide margin, but that was just one rejection among many. Over the past 50 years, the Council had dismissed hundreds of human proposals. Patents for new technologies were denied or delayed until other species could copy them. Human territorial claims were consistently ruled in favor of older species. Human mediators were excluded from major diplomatic events. Each decision seemed small at the time, justified by the reasoning that humans were still newcomers, that they needed to earn their place gradually. Ambassador Thalseen continued his report. Our investigation reveals something disturbing. The humans had been planning this exodus for at least 30 years. They built thousands of ships in secret, hidden in deep space. They created new navigation charts, pointing to regions beyond our explored territory. They trained their entire population in evacuation procedures. All of this happened under our observation, and we noticed nothing. A Calyx counselor, his tentacles writhing in agitation, spoke up. This is impossible. Our intelligence networks monitor all species. How could billions of humans coordinate such an operation in secret? Because we did not believe them capable of it, Thalseen said quietly. We underestimated them. We always have. Vexther thought back to his interactions with humans over the years. He remembered Ambassador Jamin, the human representative who had served for 2 decades. Ji Min had been patient, always diplomatic, always willing to compromise. Even when the council rejected human proposals, Ji Min would bow respectfully and thank them for their consideration. Vexter had always seen this as appropriate, deference from a younger species. Now he wondered if it had been something else entirely. Not deference, but careful observation. Not patience, but planning. The hologram shifted again, showing economic data. The young Vren analyst who had prepared the report spoke nervously. Counselors, preliminary analysis suggests significant disruption to galactic commerce. Human merchants facilitated approximately 43% of all trade between distant sectors. Their logistics networks connected regions that had no prior trade relations. Another display appeared, showing medical facilities across the galaxy. Human doctors and researchers developed treatments for 17 major diseases in the past century. They shared these treatments freely with all species. Without their knowledge, we cannot reproduce several critical medicines. The reports continued, each one revealing another piece of the puzzle. Humans had been integral to galactic infrastructure in ways no one had properly documented. They maintained communication relays in dangerous regions where other species refused to go. They operated mining facilities in asteroid fields considered too risky by others. They volunteered for peacekeeping missions in war-torn sectors. All of this work, all of these contributions, had been invisible to the Council. The humans had asked for so little in return. Just fair representation. Just recognition of their achievements. Just a seat at the table as equals. And the Council had said no, again and again. Vexler felt something he had not experienced in his long career. Shame. He had spent decades arguing that humans needed to be restrained, that their rapid growth posed a threat to galactic stability. He had convinced himself that he was acting in the galaxy's best interest. But the truth was simpler and more uncomfortable. He had been afraid. Afraid that humans, with their creativity and determination, would eventually eclipse the older species. Afraid of change. Afraid of sharing power. Now they were gone, and Vexler realized he had gotten exactly what he wanted. A galaxy without human influence. A galaxy where the old powers remained dominant. A galaxy that was already beginning to crumble. As the emergency session dragged into the night. As counselors argued and blamed each other, Vexler sat quietly at his desk. He read the human message again. You wanted the stars without us. Now you have them. 12 words. A simple statement of fact. No anger, no threats, no demands. Just acknowledgement of a truth the Council had never spoken aloud, but had demonstrated through countless actions. The humans had not left in rage. They had left in disappointment. Somehow, that felt worse. 3 months had passed since the humans vanished, and Merchant Lord Krivas stared at the financial reports with growing horror. His trading empire, built over 2 centuries, was collapsing. The numbers made no sense at first. His ships were still flying, his warehouses still full, his contracts still valid. Yet somehow, he was losing money at an impossible rate. His financial advisor, a nervous Quillen with twitching whiskers, explained the situation. The problem is transportation, my lord. Previously, human freight services moved goods between the major sectors. Their rates were low, their routes efficient. Now, we must use alternative carriers. Their prices are 3 times higher, and delivery takes twice as long. Krivas threw the datapad across his luxurious office. Then hire more ships. Increase our own fleet. We are trying, my lord. But human logistics software managed our shipping schedules. Without it, we cannot optimize routes. We have tried to replicate their system, but it was far more sophisticated than we understood. Also, many of our suppliers depended on human intermediaries. Without those connections, we cannot source materials efficiently. The merchant lord felt his multiple hearts beating faster. He had built his fortune through careful planning and shrewd investments. He had always prided himself on understanding every aspect of his business. But now he realized that underneath his empire, invisible to him, humans had been maintaining the infrastructure that made everything work. They had asked for nothing except fair payment. He had never questioned their presence because they were so reliable. Now they were gone, and the machine was breaking down. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. On the industrial world of Corvin Prime, factories shut down because nobody could maintain the manufacturing equipment humans had designed. On Desha Station, the water purification system failed because the replacement filters humans produced were no longer available. In the Outer Rim, pirates grew bold without human patrol ships maintaining security. The Wren Empire and the Calyx Confederation nearly went to war over a disputed mining claim in the Theta sector. For years, such disputes had been resolved through negotiation. Commander Jing Wu, a human officer assigned to border security, had always managed to find solutions both sides could accept. He would listen to both parties, review the evidence carefully, and propose compromises that seemed obvious once explained. Without Jingwu and officers like him, the dispute escalated. Friendships blockaded the mining site. Calyx vessels responded with threats. Military forces mobilized on both sides. The Galactic Council called emergency meetings, but the counselors could not agree on how to proceed. Every proposed solution favored one side or the other. Nobody could find the middle ground the way Jingwu had. War was only avoided when both sides exhausted themselves economically. The blockade cost too much to maintain. But the mining site remained in dispute, and the bitterness between the two civilizations deepened. On the medical station orbiting Axios Prime, Dr. Hyojin's absence was felt most severely. The young researcher had worked there for 15 years, developing treatments for exotic diseases. She had been friendly and cheerful, always willing to explain her work to others. Her research notes were comprehensive and well organized. The station's staff had learned much from her, but when a plague broke out in the colony below, they discovered gaps in their knowledge. Dr. Hyojin had developed a vaccine for this particular disease 5 years ago. Her notes contained the formula and production process. The station's doctors followed her instructions carefully, but the vaccine did not work. Something was wrong. After days of desperate research, they found the problem. One component of the vaccine required a specific synthesis process that Dr. Hyojin had perfected but never fully documented. She had mentioned it in a lecture once, saying it was just a simple trick she had learned from her mentor. That simple trick was now beyond their ability to replicate. The plague spread. Thousands died. The station's chief medical officer stood in Dr. Hyojin's old laboratory, watching recordings of her lectures, searching for any clue they might have missed. In the videos, she smiled and explained complex concepts in simple terms. She made difficult procedures look easy. She had been so generous with her knowledge. They had never properly thanked her. When she left with the other humans, the staff had been too busy with their own work to even say goodbye. The council met again to discuss the growing crisis. Ambassador Thal Seen presented his findings. Over the past 3 months, he had been investigating human contributions to galactic society. What he found disturbed him deeply. Humans held 43,000 registered patents, he reported. But our investigation reveals they made many more discoveries they never patented. They shared innovations freely, believing such knowledge should benefit everyone. Meanwhile, other species often copied human techniques and claimed them as their own developments. Counselor Vexther listened uncomfortably. He remembered voting against several human patent applications, arguing they were too broad or too obvious. At the time, He had convinced himself he was preventing monopolies. Now he saw it differently. Thalcine continued. We have also discovered what humans called contingency nodes. These are automated systems humans placed throughout the galaxy to monitor and maintain critical infrastructure. There are over 10,000 such nodes. They regulated power grids, balanced traffic through jump gates, monitored solar radiation levels, and performed countless other functions. All of them deactivated when the humans left. Can we reactivate them? Someone asked. No, they require human access codes and human maintenance. We are attempting to build replacement systems, but it will take years. A Quillan counselor spoke up, her voice sharp. This sounds like sabotage. The humans deliberately made us dependent on them. Thalcine's compound eyes fixed on her. With respect, counselor, the humans did not make us dependent. We chose not to learn their systems. We chose not to train our own people in these skills. When humans offered to teach us, we declined, saying we had our own methods. The humans did not hide their work. We simply did not pay attention. The chamber fell silent. The truth was uncomfortable but undeniable. Humans had been so competent, so reliable, so willing to help, that everyone had taken them for granted. Their contributions had been undervalued because they made everything look easy. Vexther thought about the human workers who had maintained the council building itself. They had been polite and efficient, always completing repairs quickly and thoroughly. He had never learned their names. He had never wondered how much skill the work required. He had simply expected things to function out. Now the building's environmental systems were malfunctioning. The non-human maintenance staff struggled with repairs. Systems that humans had fixed in hours now took days. 1 year after humanity's departure, the galaxy was falling apart. Ambassador Thalcine walked through the archives beneath the council building, surrounded by centuries of historical records. He had become obsessed with understanding how the council had failed so completely. The answer had to be here somewhere, hidden in the documents and data. The archives were cold and quiet. Dust gathered on terminals that nobody used anymore. The human archivists who had once maintained this place had kept everything perfectly organized. Now, Thalcine struggled to find what he needed. The filing system made sense once you understood it, but that understanding had left with its creators. He finally located what he was looking for: classified military reports from the past century. Admiral Haiyan Su's name appeared frequently. The human officer had served in the Galactic Defense Force for 30 years, rising to command the entire Outer Rim fleet. His reports were detailed and thoughtful, analyzing threats and proposing strategies. Thalcine opened a file dated 15 years ago. Admiral Haiyan Su had written an assessment of galactic stability. The report predicted exactly what was happening now. If human participation in galactic affairs was restricted or diminished, the Admiral warned critical systems would fail. He listed specific vulnerabilities: trade routes, medical supplies, conflict resolution, infrastructure maintenance. Everything that was now breaking down. The report concluded with a recommendation: grant humans full equal status in the Council, recognize their contributions properly, and integrate them completely into galactic institutions. Otherwise, the Admiral wrote, humans might eventually decide that isolation was preferable too. Continued disrespect. The Council had classified the report and ignored it. Several counselors, including Vexther, had written rebuttals calling Admiral Haiyan Su's concerns exaggerated and self-serving. They accused him of making threats to gain political advantage for his species. Thalcine set down the datapad and covered his face with his claws. They had been warned. The humans had tried to tell them, not in anger, but in genuine concern for galactic welfare. And the Council had dismissed those warnings as manipulation. Above ground, the galaxy spiraled into chaos. The Vren Empire's economy had contracted by 40%. Their currency, once stable and strong, was collapsing because it had been backed by trade agreements that humans had negotiated and maintained. Without those agreements, trading partners were abandoning Vren currency for more stable alternatives. The Calyx Confederation faced similar problems. Their industrial base depended on rare materials that human miners had extracted from dangerous asteroid fields. No other species was willing or able to work in those conditions. Without those materials, Calyx factories were shutting down. Unemployment was rising. Social unrest was spreading. Smaller civilizations suffered even more. Many had never developed their own advanced infrastructure because human contractors had provided those services cheaply and reliably. Now they were stranded with technology they could not maintain. Some worlds were regressing technologically, forced to abandon systems they no longer knew how to repair. Engineer Bidax worked in his laboratory 18 hours a day, trying to solve an impossible problem. He was attempting to rebuild a quantum computing system that humans had designed. The system regulated traffic through the Nexus Jump Gate, the busiest transportation hub in the galaxy. Since the humans left, the gate's efficiency had dropped by 60%. Ships waited days for passage instead of hours. The entire sector's economy was suffering. Bidax had worked alongside human engineers for 20 years. He considered himself knowledgeable about their techniques. But now, alone in his lab, he realized how much he had missed. The humans had made everything look simple. They would explain concepts clearly, answer questions patiently, and solve problems quickly. Bidax had learned much from them, but apparently not enough that the quantum system's architecture was brilliant but complex. Every component connected to others in ways Bidax was still discovering. The humans had built redundancy upon redundancy, backup systems for the backup systems. They had anticipated every possible failure mode. But understanding their work and recreating it were very different challenges. He found notes left by engineer Yoon Co, the human who had led the project. Her handwriting was neat and precise. She had documented everything thoroughly. But even with her notes, Bidax struggled. There were gaps in the documentation where Yoon Co had probably explained things verbally to her team. There were references to techniques that Bidax did not know. There were components built with such precision that his equipment could not match them. After 3 months of trying, Bidax had to admit defeat. He could not rebuild what the humans had created. The best he could do was a crude alternative that worked at perhaps 30% efficiency. The Nexus Gate would never function properly again, not without human expertise. The Council attempted to send search expeditions to find humanity and negotiate their return. They offered everything: full Council membership, control over disputed territories, financial compensation, formal apologies. They sent messages into deep space, broadcasting on all frequencies, begging for a response. Nothing came back except silence. The search ships explored beyond known space, following the routes human vessels might have taken. They found nothing. The galaxy was vast, and the humans had apparently planned their exodus very carefully. They could be anywhere, and they clearly did not want to be found. One expedition discovered an old human colony that had been abandoned decades before the exodus. It was in a remote system that other species considered worthless. But the colony was far more advanced than anyone expected. The humans had built underground facilities equipped with technology the Council had never seen. They had conducted research in secret, developing capabilities they never shared. The expedition leader filed a report, suggesting that humans had been preparing for independence for generations. They had hidden their true potential, always appearing less advanced and less capable than they actually were. They had played the role of junior partners in galactic civilization, while secretly building the foundation for something greater. Vexther read the report in his private chamber. He was old now and sick. The stress of the past year had aged him rapidly. He had dedicated his life to serving the Council, to maintaining what he believed was galactic stability. Now he saw the truth. He had not been maintaining stability. He had been maintaining dominance. His species' dominance, and the dominance of other old civilizations. The humans had threatened that dominance simply by being competent and ambitious. So the Council had pushed them down, again and again. Not through direct aggression, but through bureaucracy and dismissal. Through 1,000 small injustices that seemed reasonable, individually but accumulated into something unbearable. Vexther accessed the records of the final Council session before humanity's departure. He watched the recording of Ambassador Jae-min's speech. The human diplomat had been calm and professional as always. He did not shout or make accusations. He simply laid out facts, explaining how human proposals had been rejected, how human achievements had been minimized, how human dignity had been eroded gradually over decades. "We came to the stars seeking friendship," Jae-min said in the recording. "We found conditional tolerance instead. We have tried to earn your respect through service and patience. But we now understand that some will never see us as equals, no matter what we achieve. We will not spend another generation teaching our children to accept diminishment." The Council had not even voted on Jae-min's final proposal. They had simply moved on to other business, dismissing the humans' concerns as they had dismissed so many others. Vexther watched the recording end and sat in darkness, finally understanding what they had lost. 5 years after the humans left, Seeker Veltron stood on the bridge of his exploration vessel, staring at empty space. He was young for an explorer, barely 30 cycles old, but he had dedicated his entire adult life to finding humanity. While the galaxy tore itself apart, Veltran traveled beyond mapped regions, chasing rumors and faint signals, hoping to discover where the humans had gone. This was his 17th expedition, and like the others, it had found nothing. His crew was tired and discouraged. They had followed a promising lead suggesting human activity in this sector. Ancient probes had detected unusual energy signatures that matched human technology. But when they arrived, they found only empty space and natural phenomena. Another dead end. The navigator, a patient Quillen named Seth, approached him carefully. "Seeker, our supplies are low. We should return to Council space." Veltran did not answer immediately. He was studying the navigation charts, comparing them to historical records. Before her disappearance, Captain Yunseo had been the Council's most accomplished explorer. She had mapped more systems than anyone in history. Her route logs were incomplete, many marked as classified, but Veltran had obtained copies through unofficial channels. Yunseo's routes revealed a pattern. She had been exploring regions far beyond what her official missions required. She had visited dead systems with no strategic value, places no one else bothered to survey. At the time, people had thought she was just being thorough. Now Veltran wondered if she had been scouting for something else entirely. "One more jump," he told Seth. "There is a system here that Yunseo visited 12 times. 12 times to a system with no planets, no resources, nothing of value. We need to see what she found so interesting." Seth looked worried but nodded. The crew prepared for the jump. Veltran checked the coordinates one final time. The system was designated only as J447, a red dwarf star surrounded by asteroid fields and cosmic dust. Yunseo's last visit had been 3 years before the Exodus. They jumped. The vessel emerged from hyperspace near the lonely star. Sensors swept the system, searching for anything unusual. For several minutes, there was nothing. Then the communications officer called out excitedly, "Seeker, I am detecting a signal. Very faint, but definitely artificial." Veltran rushed to the console. The signal was weak and intermittent, but it was there. A beacon of some kind, hidden among the asteroids. They approached carefully and found it, a small satellite marked with human symbols. The beacon was old but still functioning. It was broadcasting a simple repeating message in multiple languages. Waypoint 7. Last measurement, 4,247 cycles ago. A waypoint. One of many markers humans had placed across the galaxy. But measuring what? And leading where? Veltron copied all the data from the beacon and immediately set course for Council space. This was the most significant discovery any expedition had made. If they could find more waypoints, they might be able to trace humanity's path. Back at Council headquarters, Veltran presented his findings to what remained of the Council. Many seats were empty now. Several civilizations had withdrawn from the Council entirely, too focused on their own survival to maintain galactic cooperation. Councillor Vexter was there, though he was very old now, and walked with difficulty. Ambassador Thalcine had become the Council's unofficial leader. He listened carefully to Veltran's report, studying the waypoint data. This is remarkable work, Seeker. We need to organize a comprehensive search for other waypoints. Over the following months, dozens of expeditions launched. They searched systems that Captain Yuncio and other human explorers had visited. They found 17 more waypoints, each marking coordinates and measurements. When Thalcine plotted them all on a galactic map, a pattern emerged. The waypoints formed a path leading toward the galactic rim, and then beyond. Humanity had not just left. They had left toward something. Some destination they had been preparing for decades. But the final waypoint provided no further clues. It simply stated, "Journey begins here. Final coordinates classified. Do not follow." The Council authorized one last massive expedition. They sent their best ships, their finest crews, supplied for a year-long journey into uncharted space. Veltran led the fleet. Councillor Vexter asked to come with them, saying he needed to know the truth before he died. They followed the path suggested by the waypoints, jumping system by system into regions where no one had traveled before. They found more evidence of human passage, discarded fuel containers, old campsites on barren moons, faint drive signatures in solar wind. The humans had come this way, that much was certain. 3 months into the expedition, they discovered something extraordinary. An ancient human colony established 70 years before the Exodus. It had been kept completely secret from the Council. The colony was not large, perhaps a few thousand inhabitants, but it was incredibly advanced. The buildings were empty but intact. The colonists had left with the others, but they had left behind something remarkable: archives. Data storage facilities filled with human records, research, and history. Veltran spent weeks reading through the files. What he found changed everything he thought he knew about humanity. The archives showed that humans had been far more advanced than they ever revealed to the Council. They had developed technologies they never shared, achieved scientific breakthroughs they kept secret, not because they were hostile, but because they had learned early that displaying too much capability made other species nervous and hostile. One file contained recordings of meetings between human leaders spanning several decades. Veltran watched as they debated their place in galactic society. Some argued for full openness, for sharing everything humanity had achieved. Others counseled caution, pointing to how the Council reacted whenever humans seemed too successful or too ambitious. "They fear us," one human leader said in a recording, "not because we are aggressive, but because we are different. We think differently, we innovate differently, we approach problems differently. Our very existence challenges their sense of natural order." Another responded, "Then we must be patient. We must prove ourselves gradually. Surely, over time, they will accept us." But the recordings showed growing doubt as years passed. Each rejection, each dismissal, each casual insult accumulated. The humans tried to be understanding. They made excuses for the council's behavior. They told themselves that prejudice would fade with time. Eventually, they realized it would not. The discrimination was not going to end. No amount of patience or service would make them truly equal in the eyes of the older civilizations. So they began planning their departure. One recording particularly affected Veltran. It was Ambassador Jamin speaking to other human leaders years before his final council speech. "I love the galaxy," Jamin said quietly. "I love the diversity, the ancient wisdom, the different perspectives. I wanted humanity to be part of something greater than ourselves. But they do not want us, not really. They want us diminished, grateful for whatever scraps of respect they offer. I cannot ask our children to accept that future." Veltran watched as tears ran down the human's face. Jamin was not angry. He was heartbroken. The expedition found no trail leading beyond the colony. The humans had hidden their final destination too well. Veltran's fleet had to admit defeat and return to council space. On the journey back, Veltran spent long hours talking with Counselor Vexther. The old diplomat was weak and knew he did not have much time left. "I was wrong," Vexther said simply. "About everything. I thought I was protecting galactic stability. I was only protecting my own privilege. The humans asked for so little. Just fairness. Just respect. And I denied them even that." He looked at the stars through the viewport. "Do you know what the worst part is, young Veltran? They were right to leave. Any species with dignity would have done the same. We made the galaxy a place where the best among us could not thrive. What does that say about us?" Veltran had no answer. 10 years after humanity vanished, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Galactic Council still existed, but it was smaller and humbler. Many civilizations had collapsed or withdrawn into isolation. Wars had been fought and ended in exhaustion rather than victory. Trade was a fraction of what it once was. Technology had stagnated without human innovation, but something else had changed too. The younger generation of aliens had grown up hearing stories about humans. Not the dismissive stories their parents had told, but the truth. Teachers now explained how human doctors had saved millions of lives, how human engineers had built the systems that everyone had taken for granted, how human diplomats had prevented countless wars. Schools taught about Ambassador Jamin's patience and dignity, about Captain Yunseo's brilliant explorations, about Dr. Hyojin's life-saving research, about Admiral Hyensu's warnings that no one heeded. The humans had become legends, symbols of what the galaxy had lost through its own prejudice. Young Counselor Co, who had taken his grandfather Thalcein's seat after the old ambassador's death, worked tirelessly to reform the council. New laws protected minority species from discrimination. New regulations ensured fair treatment in commerce and politics. Every proposal was now evaluated by diverse committees that had to explain their reasoning publicly. These changes came too late for humanity, but they might prevent future mistakes. That was something. At least Seeker Veltran was old now, his scales gray with age. He had never stopped searching for humanity, though his expeditions had become less frequent over the years. He had explored hundreds of systems, followed countless leads, and found nothing but echoes of the human's passage. On this particular day, he was in his study, reviewing old data for perhaps the 1000th time, when his communication console activated. The message was marked urgent, flagged by the council's monitoring systems. His hands shook as he opened the file. After a moment, he called Counselor Co. "You need to come here immediately. We have received a transmission from humanity." Within hours, the entire council gathered in the central chamber. The room was not as full as it once had been, but every remaining member was present. They sat in absolute silence As the transmission played dot, the message was audio only. The voice that spoke was calm, neither friendly nor hostile. It carried authority and sadness in equal measure. To the Galactic Council, the voice began. We acknowledge receipt of your many messages over the past 10 years. We appreciate your search efforts and your attempts to contact us. We understand that much has changed since our departure. We have observed your struggles from a distance, and we recognize that our absence has caused hardship. For that suffering, we are genuinely sorry. There was a pause. In the council chamber, no one moved. However, we will not be returning to council space. We have found a new home, far from the galaxy, you know. We have built something here, something we could never have achieved while constantly diminishing ourselves to make others comfortable. Our children grow up proud of their heritage, not apologizing for it. Our innovators create freely without fear that their achievements will be stolen or dismissed. We have found peace. Another pause, longer this time. We do not tell you this to cause pain, but so you understand. Our departure was not anger or revenge. It was self-preservation. For 3 centuries, we tried to fit into your civilization. We compromised, we adapted, we made ourselves smaller in hopes of being accepted. We told ourselves that patience would eventually earn us equality. But we finally understood that we were teaching our children to accept diminishment as normal. We could not allow that. The voice continued, and now there was something else in it. Not anger, but a deep tiredness. You asked why we left so completely, taking everything with us. Because we learned that what you valued was not us, but what we could do for you. Our labor, our innovation, our willingness to work in places others would not go. When we asked for respect in return, we were told we needed to earn it. When we achieved great things, we were told not to be arrogant. When we requested fair treatment, we were told to be patient. Always patient. Always waiting for acceptance that never quite arrived. Counselor SEO closed his eyes, feeling the weight of those words. He had read his grandfather's records. He knew every detail of how the council had treated humanity. The casual dismissals, the stolen innovations, the bureaucratic barriers that applied only to humans. Each small injustice had seemed insignificant at the time. Together, they had driven an entire species away. The voice spoke again. We do not hate you. Hate would mean we still care about your opinion of us. We have moved beyond that. We are simply tired. Tired of explaining why we deserve respect. Tired of proving our worth to those determined not to see it. Tired of making ourselves less threatening by being less than we are. Now came the part that changed everything. However, we recognize that the knowledge we took with us has left gaps. People are suffering because of medical treatments we developed. Civilizations struggle with infrastructure we designed. We cannot return, but we can share. Over the coming years, we will transmit the information you need. Medical procedures, engineering specifications, scientific discoveries. Everything we created that can help you rebuild. There was rustling in the chamber. This was more than anyone had hoped for. We do this not because we owe you anything, but because it is right. Because people are suffering, and we have the knowledge to help. Because whatever our grievances with your governments, we do not wish to see ordinary people harmed. We will send the information. We will answer technical questions. But we will not return. This is not a negotiation. The transmission shifted. Now there were multiple voices, recordings from different humans. They heard Captain Day 1 explaining his decision to leave. I commanded the finest fleet in the galaxy, but my officers were passed over for promotion, while less qualified aliens advanced. My strategies were ignored in planning meetings until an alien admiral suggested the same ideas. I was tired of fighting for recognition of what I achieved. They heard Engineer Yun Co, her voice bright with hope despite her words. I found a new galaxy. completely empty, waiting for us. 300 billion stars, and not one of them has someone telling us to slow down, be quiet, not reach too high. We can build whatever we dream there. We can be fully ourselves. They heard Dr. Hyojin speaking softly. I loved my work at the medical station. I loved helping people. But when I published my research, other species would claim they had discovered the same things independently. When I won awards, there were always questions about whether human work was truly innovative or just copied from other species. I was tired of defending my integrity. And finally, they heard Ambassador Jamin. This recording was from his private logs, never meant for others to hear. I gave 30 years to galactic diplomacy. 30 years of being patient, being understanding, accepting disrespect with grace. I told myself it mattered, that I was building bridges. But the truth is simpler. I was teaching younger humans that their dignity was negotiable, that they should accept being treated as lesser in hopes of eventual acceptance. I failed them. I should have fought harder. I should have demanded respect rather than begging for it. There was a long silence in the recording. When Jamin spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. But maybe this failure is also a success. Maybe by leaving, we teach them something more important, that self-respect is not negotiable, that some things are worth walking away from, that freedom and dignity matter more than acceptance from those who will never truly accept you. The transmission ended with a final message from the first voice. You wanted the stars without us. Now you have them. We hope you build something better than what we left. We hope you learn from your mistakes. We hope the civilizations that come after us are treated more fairly. But we will not return to teach you these lessons. You must learn them yourselves. This is our final message. The technical information will follow. Farewell. The council chamber remained silent for a long time. Finally, Counselor SEO stood. His voice was thick with emotion. We will accept their gift with gratitude, and we will ensure that every civilization, every school, every public space has monuments honoring humanity's contributions. Not to celebrate their return, because they are not returning, but to remember what we lost, to remember what we did, to remember that it was our fault. Over the following years, the promised information arrived. Medical procedures, engineering techniques, scientific discoveries. All of it freely given, with no conditions attached. The humans kept their word. The galaxy slowly rebuilt. Not to its former glory that was lost forever, but to something smaller and perhaps wiser. The monuments to humanity appeared everywhere. Statues of Ambassador Jamin, Captain Yoon Seo, Dr. Hyojin, Admiral Hyun Soo, and countless others. But the most common monument was simpler. A blank pedestal with words carved into its base. To the humans, we did not value you until you were gone. We are sorry. We will do better. And far away, in another galaxy under unfamiliar stars, humanity built and dreamed. They created wonders without restraint. They raised children who never learned to make themselves small. They were finally completely free. Sometimes they looked back at the galaxy they had left behind, not with anger, but with a bittersweet sadness for what might have been. They had wanted to be part of something greater. Instead, they had to become something greater on their own. Perhaps it was better this way.